I read your Bloomberg View column on this, and I thought you made a great point, which is now the cover-up is worse than the crime, right?
Well, now the cover-up has really become the crime. Because, I think that most of us probably suspect that Tom Brady did something with those footballs, or at least knew that that was happening. But now what the NFL is hinging its entire discipline on is the fact that he threw out his cell phone.
Right.
And that's really the cover-up becoming the crime itself in lieu of any hard evidence.
I mean, on the surface, we don't know all the details. It does sound suspicious.
I mean,
right?
it sounds extremely suspicious. And the thing is, the NFL doesn't have a particularly high burden of proof when it comes to their discipline. They just really need probable cause. But it does bring up kind of broader questions about whether an employer is compelled to ask you to give up your private cell phone in these kinds of cases. Right. Now, there are all kinds of, the NFL doesn't have subpoena power under the collective bargaining agreement, but Roger Goodell also has widespread power to kind of rule as he likes. So there are a lot of competing factors here.
There are, because he wasn't, we were discussing this. I mean, there was no legal case for him to be able to say hand over your cell phone or to even try and subpoena the records, right?
Well, exactly. Ted Wells, who was conducting the independent, quote-unquote, investigation into this, had no subpoena powers. Yes. So really, Tom Brady wasn't compelled legally to hand over his cell phone. It looks a little suspicious that he didn't, and that he also disposed of his cell phone. But that goes beyond questions of legality at this point.
Right. Well, but this is getting into a legal case, right? Because so the NFL Players Association, they called this ruling outrageous, and you just heard Robert Kraft say this is unfathomable. But this is going to continue in the courts, isn't it?
This is going to continue in the courts, and actually the NFL preempted the union's legal action by filing a motion themselves in a U.S. District Court in New York yesterday. And the belief here is that they were trying to get in front of this to say that the jurisdiction for this case will be in New York and not in Minnesota, where the U.S. District Judge, Judge David Doty, happens to usually rule in favor of the players in the union when that happens. So this is going to be very complicated. This is going to drag out for as long as both parties want to do so, and you're going to continue to see various leaks from either side about who cut what deal and who turned down what kind of evidence in order to make this go on for as long as possible.
Well, Goodell has a good relationship with the owners, right? And during the whole scandal with Ray Rice, you saw owners, including Robert Kraft, come out in support of Goodell and his decision. So is this sort of the break that might jeopardize Goodell here?
I mean, I think that is really the most fascinating part of all of this. On the one hand, I think you can definitely see that the disciplinary process in the NFL is haphazard. They're making it up as they go along. It's very arbitrary, and Roger Goodell pretty much has unchecked power. I mean, it's absolutely a farce that he is his own arbitrator, essentially. On the other hand, this is what the owners agreed to, so it falls a little bit tone deaf for Robert Kraft to come out and say that he is, he regrets putting his faith in the league because he has been against neutral arbitration, as all of the other owners have been, and he kind of put himself in this situation in that sense. So it is really interesting to see somebody, especially as ingrained in Roger Goodell's inner circle as Robert Kraft, start to break from that central power.
Right, he's fine with it as long as it doesn't come down on the other side of him then. Okay, and what about for the players? What about for Brady himself? I mean, what does this mean?
Well, I think Brady is really just trying to maintain his marketability and his legacy here. There was a report saying that the NFL considered halving his suspension by 2 games, so it would have been 2 games total, if he had just come out and confessed and publicly apologized. And there's a report saying that he refused to do that.
That
to
would be
protect his image, really.
More damaging for his
much more long-term damage to his brand versus just missing a couple of games for the Patriots. But he is very adamantly denying this. He's maintaining his innocence, and he also said in his statement on Facebook that he didn't want to set a precedent for other players that they would have to give up their private communications in their cell phone, which is an interesting point that he has to make.